Hello everyone, this is the second video in my series which summarizes the Witcher books, and this time I'll be focusing on the 1992 release Sword of Destiny. This book is a collection of short stories like The Last Wish was, so this will be a long video. Plus, this book is a lot longer than The Last Wish, so it's going to be a really long video. I am leaving out the stories A Little Dedication and The Eternal Flame, because I do not believe they'll have any impact on future events. A Little Dedication was my favorite story in the series, so it's a shame to leave out, but I am trying to keep the length down. I believe the rest of this videos after this one will be a lot shorter because they are actual novels rather than short story collections. The last thing I want to say before I get started is that I'm trying to stay in chronological order with the summaries. Even though Sword of Destiny was published before The Last Wish, I am covering Sword of Destiny after The Last Wish, because it follows the order of events in the books. But the last book of the series, titled Seasons of Storms, also takes place around the time of The Last Wish, and I'm going to skip it for now and save it for last. The people on the internet said that somehow Season of Storms spoils a lot of what happens in future books, and that it is intended to be read last regardless of where it fits into it chronologically. I'm going to follow this advice and save Season of Storms for last. That's about all I've got, so let's get started. The first story in The Sword of Destiny is titled The Limits of the Possible. It opens with a group of villagers standing outside a cave, discussing the amount of time that has passed since they sent a man into the cave to slay a basilisk. With the man being gone for so long, the people are now eyeing the man's horse and possessions with a mind of stealing them and heading home. This is when an unarmed man with curly brown hair emerges from behind some nearby ruins, unarmed, and recommends that the villagers not rob the cave adventurer. When the villagers see that this stranger is unarmed, they begin drawing weapons. Only at this point does the curly-haired man reveal he has two armed bodyguards who are there with him. They are beautiful Zaracanian blonde women, with blue and white striped tattoos going from the edge of their eyes to their ears. The villagers lay down their arms. This is when Geralt of Rivia emerges from the cave with a slain basilisk in hand. Geralt quickly discerns what almost happened to his possessions and demands payment from the villagers before suggesting that they run. The unarmed man still has a grudge against the leader of the villagers who had threatened him and orders one of his bodyguards to behead him. Geralt admires the beauty of the strike and introduces himself to his benefactors. The brown-haired man introduces himself as Borch, but also nicknamed Three Jackdaws. He also admits he cannot fully pronounce his bodyguard's name, but he calls them Tia and Via. Borch says that they are all going to a nearby inn and would enjoy Geralt's company. Geralt accepts the invitation and leaves the scene with them. The group grabs a table at the inn's tavern area, and Borch orders food for them all. He is ordering platters of food, kegs of beer, more platters, and more kegs. It is clear money is no concern for him. While they are eating and enjoying the food, Borch and Geralt are talking about a Witcher's ethics and what they will or will not kill. Witchers do not kill intelligent species, and it surprises Borch that they will not kill dragons. Geralt continues to discuss dragons and the four colors that they come in, green, red, black, and white, but Geralt also dismisses rumors of golden dragons, which have the ability to shapeshift. Borch seems to hold on to these legends, though. Eventually, Borch has to go relieve his bladder, and Tia accompanies him, leaving Geralt and Via alone at the table. Geralt first asks Via what her full name is. She replies, Alvia Nurl. Before Borch returns, Geralt also asks why a proud Zaracanian warrior would work as a simple bodyguard for Borch. She says he is the most beautiful. Borch and Tia return, and they all decide on a hot bath for 4. The next morning, Geralt and Borch are still traveling together towards Holopole. They find that the bridge out of town has been blocked off by a guard. Nobody is allowed to cross unless they have a pass from King Niedemir. There is also a bard named Jaskier waiting to cross so that he may write a ballad on the ongoing dragon hunt on the other side. Jaskier explains to Geralt's party what has happened. A town began being terrorized by a green dragon. The town's cobbler responded by taking a sheep, stuffing it full of toxic substances, and putting it on a pike as bait. The dragon took the bait, but instead of dying, it was only greatly weakened and made ill. The dragon is hiding away in the ravines near Holopole, likely guarding its treasure. King Niedemir has had his eyes on the land of Malior, and hopes to take it through marriage. However, the people of Malior do not wish this and pulled up a prophecy that the princess would only marry one who comes bearing the head of a dragon. So King Niedamir has hired a large group of dragon hunters to slay the dragon for him. Only those with Niedamir's dragon hunter passes are allowed to cross the bridge to Holopol. First, you have Knight Ike of Denizel, a knight who hunts monsters much like a witcher, but for nobility and honor rather than for coin. Then there is Boholt, Nishika, and Ripper. These three make up the Crinfrid Reavers, which are some of the most famed dragon hunters in the world. Next, there is a dwarf named Yarpen Zigrin, and 5 dwarves under his command. They took out one of the strongest dragons in recent memory. Lastly, an unknown sorceress with black hair on a black horse recently crossed the bridge with a pass, though nobody knew who she was. Jaskier finishes his recap, and Geralt says that the dragon is pretty much done for. Another sorcerer named Doragure arrives. He does not have a hunter's pass, but confirms that the unknown sorceress from before was Yennefer. There are now a large number of people on one side of the bridge who would like to be on the other side. Led by Borch and Doragure, the group bribes the guards and crosses. In the next scene, it would seem that Geralt has caught up with the king's party, and they've made themselves comfortable. The king, his chancellor, named Guildenstern, Yennefer, and Doragure are holding a private meeting, while Geralt, Borch, and Jaskier are at a fire with the dragon hunters discussing how to split up the dragon's treasure when they get it. One half will go to the dragon slayers themselves, a quarter will go to those who provide support on the side, and a quarter will go to King Niedamir, who is more interested in Malior anyways than the dragon's treasure. Yennefer emerges from the king's tent and is surprised to see Geralt. She berates all present, as Yennefer often does, and then leaves for her own tent. Nobody notices Geralt sneak after her. Geralt tells Yennefer that the only reason he joined the dragon hunt was to see her, but these are some of the last words he gets out before she begins threatening and insulting him. One line of Yennefer's in particular seems too specific to be a metaphor. She says, quote, "I am neither a whore nor an elf met at random on a forest path that you can run out on the following morning without waking, leaving a bunch of violets on the table." End quote. While Geralt may be happy to see her, Yennefer kicks him out of the tent. I need to make a quick aside to something I meant to include in the last book summary, but accidentally left out. A sorceress's extensive use of magic slowly changes their body, eventually leaving them barren and unable to have children. Yennefer has been desperately searching for a way to cure this affliction, but to no avail. Geralt even tried to leave some of his reward from a job behind at Militel's temple to further her search for a cure, in case she returns. It is a very tender and sensitive subject for her. Getting back to the story, the next morning, members of the Holopol militia are guiding the party through the canyon to the injured green dragon. The conversations on the way make it clear that almost nobody is getting along. Knight Ike thinks that all these hired mercenaries and the mutant witcher will only bring divine doom on the party. Meanwhile, everyone thinks that Ike might be insane. Geralt is causing some concern, especially with King Niedamir and Guildenstern, because they do not know why he is there if he will not be hunting the dragon. Borch is causing some similar questions, because nobody knows why he came either. His body's guards are Zerrikanian, which are known for worshipping dragons and not hunting them. Doragure is also known for his radical views in defense of monsters and speaking out against the hunt of them. Doragure and Yennefer get in an argument on this subject, which Yennefer comes out on top of. Doragure, the poor loser, takes a jab at Yennefer's barrenness in response. Geralt tries to comfort her, but is only insulted. This time he's had enough and throws some insults back. Borch and Geralt are left in the back of the caravan when it suddenly stops. Geralt rides to the front to see what is happening. There is an old bridge, and people are discussing whether or not it can take the weight of the baggage wagons. As they are talking this through, a landslide begins near the back of the caravan, and everyone rushes across the bridge. Yennefer is knocked from her horse in the panic, and Geralt comes to her aid. As Geralt and Yennefer are crossing the bridge, it snaps in half. Geralt has jammed his dagger into the bridge and is dangling from it. Yennefer is dangling from Geralt, and in a much more dangerous situation. In the panic of the moment, Geralt asks Yennefer to forgive him for his earlier crimes against her. She refuses. While Jaskier pleads for somebody to help them, the rest of the party deliberates whether they should let just Yennefer die or let both of them die. Knight Ike of Denizell cuts short the deliberations and comes to their aid with a rope. Many baggage wagons and members of the militia were cut off or killed by the landslide, and the remaining party is trying to decide how to proceed when they are approached by two forward scouts, who announce that the dragon is just ahead. Everyone rushes forward to see it, only to be shocked when they find a golden dragon instead. Dorgare threatens to stop anyone who would lay a hand on the living legend, but he is quickly silenced when he sees how outnumbered he is. The dragon then communicates telepathically with all present, which means it can also read minds. The dragon introduces himself as Villain Trettenmirth and announces that he started the landslide. He tells the party that they may take either of the two paths leading out of the canyon, but they may not take the third path leading deeper into the ravine. If they wish to take this third path, then they may challenge the dragon in an honorable duel, with no use of magic or fire breath. While most of the party wants to simply jump on the dragon all at once, Knight Ike of Denizell is honor-bound to instead accept the terms of the duel. Everyone watches the duel, and are surprised at how beautifully he jousts with the dragon. But it only takes one turn for the dragon to disembowel Ike's horse and cripple the knight himself. Yennefer knows that Geralt is the only person with reactions quick enough to face the dragon, and she begs him to kill the dragon for her. She forgives Geralt for leaving her and appears truly remorseful. Geralt refuses, but also questions why somebody as well off as Yennefer is so devoted on killing this dragon. She says she has found a way to cure her barrenness, but does not have enough money. A golden dragon would fix this, but Geralt still refuses. King Niedemir decides it would be easier to take the Principality of Malior by force than slaying this dragon for its head and taking the Principality by marriage. He takes his escort and leaves. Dorgare, now emboldened by the reduced numbers, tries to stand up for the dragon again. The Reavers knock him out. Jaskier has decided the dragon is too beautiful to be slain, and joins Geralt in coming to the Dorgare's aid. But Geralt and Jaskier are quickly quelled by Yennefer, and then taken captive by the Reavers. Yennefer then decides that she will face the dragon on her own, but is instead captured by the Reavers and Zigrin's dwarves. They tear open her clothes and decide that whoever stands most strongly against the dragon will be the first to rape her. The Reavers and dwarves go to face the dragon, but they are almost instantly wounded or crippled. Villain Trettenmirth then flies up to the tied-up ex-hunters and leaves them a baby green dragon in their care before Villain Trettenmirth goes to deal with the reorganized Holopole militia. The militia, with their wagons and fishing nets, are actually getting the better of the dragon until the dragon lets out a loud roar. Tia and Via come charging over the hill, swords in hand, slaying militiamen left and right. As the militia tries to regroup, Geralt uses the Igni sign to burn through the binds on Yennefer's legs. She then uses her legs to cast spells at the militiamen and turn them into harmless animals. With the chaos over, Via approaches Yennefer with her sword drawn. Before Via kills Yennefer, Borch, or as I should say, Villain Trettenmirth, tells her to stop, as enough blood has been spilled this day. Before Geralt goes to talk to Villain Trettenmirth, Yennefer asks to join him, clinging to Geralt and embracing for a kiss. Her forgiveness of Geralt was in earnest. Villain Trettenmirth explains that the green dragon was named Miragadbraka and had called to him for help. While the hunting party was all fighting each other after the king's departure, the green dragon made his escape and left the treasure behind for Villain Trettenmirth as payment for protecting her. Villain Trettenmirth is like a witcher for intelligent beasts who works to protect them from humans. He explains that Villain Trettenmirth means 3 blackbirds, hence the nickname 3 jackdaws. Before he leaves, he looks at Yennefer and says, "It's written on your faces. I don't even need to read your thoughts. You are made for each other, you and the Witcher. But nothing will come of it. Nothing. I'm sorry." End quote. Yennefer responds, quote, "I know, Villain Trettenmirth, but I too would like to believe that there is no limit as to what's possible, or at least that this limit is very distant." She uses some of the dragon's earlier words to defend her side of the argument. This is a little trick which Sapkowski uses a lot in this book. Villain Trettenmirth transforms back to his dragon form, and Geralt confirms to Via that villain Trettenmirth is definitely the most beautiful before they fly off. The next story is titled A Shard of Ice. This is not an action-packed story, but I think it lays a good groundwork for how Yennefer and Geralt's relationship will exist going forward. The story starts with Geralt in a monkey cesspit fighting a tentacle monster called a Zoogle. He kills it easily and returns to his room at an inn, which he is sharing with Yennefer. She is a bigger fan of city life than wandering on the road, and cites a friend named Istrid, who says there are enough monsters in towns for a witcher to make a living. She will be going back to Istrid's the next morning to resume the work they've been doing. Geralt has had more than he likes about this Istrid, and changes the subject when he notices a black bird in the corner of the room. Yennefer says it is a kestrel she has summoned for her work. Geralt does not really ask what for. Yennefer and Geralt start getting frisky on the bed, but the kestrel flutters in the corner. This takes Yennefer out of the mood. Geralt mentions that the town has left him in a pretty bad mood, and he is anxious to leave. Yennefer responds by covering the legend of the town's name. The town is called Eidgenvale, and it means Shard of Ice. It refers to an elven legend where a queen of winter traveled the country through a blizzard, riding a sleigh drawn by white horses. Everywhere she went, she sowed shards of ice, and anyone struck would be so awed by the beauty that they would follow the queen of winter in search of something as beautiful. They would never find something as pure and beautiful again and die miserable. Geralt says that this is just a flourished way of looking at a curse known as the Wild Hunt, where men will go insane and follow a ghostly procession across the sky, leaving violence in their wake. He mentions that he was offered a job to end the curse, but turned down the job, as the Wild Hunt is unstoppable. Yennefer tries to romanticize it a bit more, but Geralt has fallen asleep. The next morning, Geralt's bad mood picks up when he sees that Yennefer has already left for Istred's. He goes about some errands in town, and his mood continues to worsen. On his way to the town alderman to seek payment for the Zoogle, he is confronted by the alderman's bodyguard. The bodyguard is named Ivo Mursa, but he is better known as the Cicada, a highly wanted bandit. The Cicada relieves Geralt of his sword while he goes to talk to the alderman. The alderman pays Geralt and tries to discuss a follow-up job, but Geralt makes it clear he plans to leave the town as soon as he can. This surprises the alderman, because normally when Yennefer comes to town to work with Istred, she stays for a while. Geralt's curiosity gets the better of him, so he asks the alderman where he could meet Istred. The alderman points Geralt to the dig site at the edge of town, or to Istred's nearby house. Geralt decides to head for Istred's house, and requests his sword back from the Cicada on his way out. The Cicada insinuates he would like to duel Geralt to have the honor of defeating the legendary White Wolf. Geralt threatens the Cicada back, takes his sword, and makes for Istred's. Yennefer has already left Istred's, so Geralt and Istred share the usual insults that witchers and sorcerers throw at each other. Istred is especially dedicated to insulting Geralt's inability to experience emotions. The witcher trials harass the body so much that they can no longer feel emotion, and Istred touches on this a lot. Istred eventually says he would like to discuss Yennefer, who he actually calls Yenna. Istred and Yennefer have worked together for years, and he has offered for Yennefer to live with him permanently. Yennefer has said she must think about it. Istred knows that the reason for her hesitation is Geralt. Istred tells Geralt that the Witcher has no right standing between Istred's and Yennefer's happiness, since Geralt cannot even feel happiness. He asks Geralt to leave. Geralt smugly claims he does have a right to Yennefer, as she slept with him last night. Istred is taken aback, but responds that Yennefer had slept with him that morning. There really isn't much more that can be civilly said, and Geralt leaves. When Yennefer returns to their room at the inn, Geralt is sitting on the bed waiting for her. She opens up immediately and admits that as soon as she agreed to head to Eidgenvale with Geralt, that she knew she would end up sleeping with Istred, whose real name is Val. She admits that Val is very dear to her, just like Geralt is, and she is still considering Val's offer. She thinks Istred may even love her. In the passionate conversation that follows, Yennefer brings up how she could leave Geralt if she wanted, just like he had left her without a goodbye at her home in Vergenberg. This is a touchy subject which he has apologized for, and he begins attacking himself for being an emotionless mutant. This is something Yennefer hates because she does not believe it to be true. She thinks something went wrong, and Geralt was left with the ability to feel emotions. The conversation progresses using the legend of the Queen of Winter as an extended metaphor, until Yennefer finally asks Geralt to say the one word he has never said. This word is presumably love. Geralt's pride stands in the way, and he will not. At this point, Yennefer takes Geralt's hand and creates a second kestrel from it. She says she had thought she only needed one, but was wrong. Then she says, "Some gifts you can't accept unless you are able to give something in return, something equally valuable. Otherwise, such a gift will slip through your fingers, like a shard of ice melting in a closed fist." She rambles about truth and lies for a bit, until she finally concludes by asking the kestrel born from Geralt's hand what the truth is. The kestrel replies, "A shard of ice." Geralt wanders through town in a stupor and finds himself at Istred's dig site. The two approach each other and agree on many things. They both acknowledge that they were wrong to think Yennefer's feelings for the other was a passing fling. They must duel each other, even though they both feel like fools for it, and the winner must run for their life from Yennefer after the duel. And, with time, Yennefer will forgive the winner. They agree to duel the next morning. Geralt spends the evening getting trashed in a pub, where he is approached by the alderman. The alderman does not want to pay for another sorcerer, but cannot kill or detain Geralt without facing the wrath of Istred. So instead, the alderman is here to try to pay Geralt to leave the town quietly. Geralt responds by taking his knife and slamming it between the alderman's finger. The alderman leaves, and Geralt finds that his hands are shaking. Perhaps I'm reading too much into it, but I think this scene and the next couple scenes are intended to show us that Geralt does have feelings. The shaking hands are a sign of nervousness and fear. Geralt leaves the pub unarmed and is quickly mugged by two strangers. Geralt does not fight back. Before one of the muggers slits Geralt's throat, he recognizes the Witcher's medallion around the neck. Afraid of being poisoned or stricken ill, both men flee. But one of them warns Geralt that if he wishes to kill himself, then he should go get some rope and save everyone the trouble. I think this little scene is intended to show Geralt's ability to feel sadness to the point of depression. Geralt spends the night in a stable, and the next morning heads to the duel. He is confronted by the cicada on the way, who is still looking for the honor of defeating Geralt. Geralt declines and insults the cicada, intentionally provoking the bandit to try to spit in Geralt's face. As the cicada is winding up the spit, Geralt hits him with a sucker punch, and then viciously kicks him in his face several times while he is down. Once again, I think this is supposed to show Geralt's ability to feel anger. Geralt arrives at the scene of the duel and finds Istred with a kestrel on his shoulder and prepared to fight with a sword. Geralt questions why a sorcerer would fight him with a sword instead of using magic, and also asks where the kestrel came from. Istred says that the kestrel arrived that morning with a note that read, quote, "Goodbye, Val. Forgive me. I cannot accept your gift, as I have nothing to give you in return that will adequately express my gratitude. That is the truth, Val. The truth is a shard of ice." Basically, Istred has been turned down by Yennefer, and he's trying to get himself killed by Geralt in a duel. Geralt refuses to grant Istred's suicide wish, suggests that he go and get a rope, leaves the duel, and heads to the inn, where he knows an empty room and a black kestrel with a note is waiting for him. This is the end of the story, so I will go ahead and try and put the pieces together as best as I can. The big clue here is that Yennefer did not summon the second kestrel until after Geralt refused to say he loved her. Up until that point, she only had one kestrel, which we can assume was intended to be used for Istred. She admits that she thinks Istred loves her, but her note shows that she cannot return that love. When Geralt could not say he loved Yennefer, though, then she knew she may love Geralt, but he will not return it. So now she has left them both. As I said in the intro, I'm skipping the story The Eternal Fire, which is a fun and light-hearted tale involving mimics, and I'm also skipping my favorite story of this, all the short stories, called A Little Dedication, which is a little love story involving Geralt, a female bard, and some mermaids. The next story I will cover is titled The Sword of Destiny, the name of this book. There's only one story after this, and both of these spend a lot of time talking about destiny. I'll be focusing on destiny a bit here too, but I think it may be good to know from the start that Geralt is skeptical about anything like destiny or fate. The story opens with Geralt entering the forest of Brokilon, where he discovers several corpses slain by dryad arrows. He continues on and eventually hears groans coming from a nearby bush. He discovers an old acquaintance named, I'm probably going to butcher this, Freyanet, who has been injured by arrows as well. The man's injuries are too severe for him to be moved, but he asks Geralt to save the princess. Before this can be explained, an arrow goes flying by Geralt as a warning shot. He quickly sticks his arms up and begins talking in the ancient tongue. More warning shots are fired, which he actually must dodge this time, followed by more talking in the ancient tongue. Eventually the Dryads stand down and reveal themselves. As Geralt explains, he has lived in the Dryad settlement of Dwyn Canal before, he is a friend of Madame Iethna, and known as Gwynblade, which means White Wolf. He says he is on a mission, and must see Madame Iethna in Dwyn Canal. The Dryads honor the request, and one of the Dryads is assigned to be his guide. But Geralt is not allowed to help his friend Freyanet, and must leave immediately to go deeper into the forest. He is guided by a human who has not completed the transformation into a Dryad. Her name is Brain, and she's about 16 years old. Brain skillfully leads the way through the forest, but on the second day of travel they hear a scream. Geralt runs to investigate and finds a giant armored, fanged centipede known as a Gurn, about to kill a little girl. Geralt pushes the girl to the side and faces the Gurn. He has difficulty getting through the armor, and is saved by Brain's arrows, allowing him to easily finish it off. Geralt finds the girl. She is a little under 10 years old, has gray hair, and large green eyes. She looks familiar, but Geralt does not know where he's seen her before. After a little questioning, Geralt figures out that this girl's name is Ciri, and she is the princess which Freyanet had mentioned. Geralt mentions returning her to Verdun, and she immediately starts running. Brain shoots a lethal arrow at her, but it only catches Ciri's hair. Stunned, Geralt is able to catch up with her. He asks why she ran, and she eventually admits that she is expected to marry Prince Kistrin of Verdun, someone she clearly does not want to marry. Geralt asks Brain for a hiatus, so that he can bring the girl back to humans. But Brain refuses. She was caught in the Dryad woods, and so she belongs to the Dryads. While Ciri is excited not to be returning to Verdun, Geralt and Brain both know that this means she will drink the magical waters of Brokilon, lose her memory, and be transformed into a Dryad, a protector of nature and killer of men who explore where they are not wanted. While on the road, Geralt and Ciri have some cute conversations. Geralt is continuously outsmarting the little girl, while Ciri threatens to have her grandmother the queen chop off Geralt's head. Ciri refuses to say what kingdom she is from. She only says that her father had a curse, which was magically cured, and that her mother was a sorceress, but both were killed in a shipwreck. Geralt tries to scare Ciri by saying her grandmother may cut off her head for fleeing from her marriage to Prince Kistrin of Verdun. Ciri is not worried because she knows she is predestined for something and will not die until she's fulfilled it. As they approach Dwyn Canal, Bran blindfolds Geralt but does not bother with Ciri. Ciri still does not realize the implications of this. They reach Dwyn Canal in the heart of Brokilon, where Dryads live in houses which grow from trees like mistletoe berries. Geralt explains that this is because Dryads would never harm a tree. Bran escorts them into one of these houses and leaves them. Geralt and Ciri are pleased to find Freyanet alive and well. He lost consciousness in the forest and was carted back by the Dryads, who are treating him. Freyanet and Geralt share laughs over the curse Geralt lifted from him, and Ciri listens. She asks if Geralt can use magic, since he can cure curses. Freyanet admonishes her for not recognizing the great witcher Geralt of Rivia. This hits Ciri like a bus, and stuns her into silence. It is at this time that Bran comes to collect Ciri and begin preparing the ritual to transform her into a Dryad. Everything finally clicks for Ciri, and she begs to stay with Geralt, but to no avail. She is taken away. Madame Iethna arrives next, and decides to use Freyanet as a breeding horse. He will mate with the Dryads and produce offspring for a few years before safely being returned to human society. Iethna also refuses to hear the message which Geralt has come all this way to deliver. She knows it is some king or lord trying to bargain for some piece of the forest of Brokilon, and she does not care what they have to offer. Geralt later meets Madame Iethna inside of a grand tree called the Tree of Iethna, and Ciri is with her. He discusses how he is to depart the forest and what reply to give to King Vinslav who sent him. He also asks that Ciri be allowed to return with him. Iethna says that Geralt will be escorted out the next morning, that King Vinslav's reply will come from the trees as it always has, and that she will not make an exception for Ciri, and that she will stay. Geralt tries to argue on behalf of King Vinslav and Ciri at the same time. He says that the age of independent dryads are over, and that they must make the kinds of deals which Vinslav is offering if dryads are to continue to exist. Otherwise, men will hunt them all down, and habits like kidnapping little girls will only anger humans more and result in more dryad deaths. Madame Iethna does not agree. The king has come and go, but the forest of Brokilon stands strong, and she also uses Ciri as proof that the age of dryads goes on. She calls Ciri a child of, quote, she calls Ciri a, quote, child of old blood, who recognizes the role of destiny. Bran enters the room with a silver chalice containing the waters of Brokilon. Geralt is extremely angered by this and begins to leave because he thinks Iethna is trying to scare him and make him deliver the story of what happens to other humans to scare them from the forest. But Ciri begs Geralt to not leave her here at the end, and Geralt stays with her out of sympathy. Madame Iethna shows Geralt the runes on the chalice, which he translates to, "The sword of destiny has two edges. You are one of them." End quote. Without further ado, Ciri is made to drink the water. She does not have the seizure-like side effects which normally come with the waters of Brokilon. Iethna then asks, quote, "Child of old blood, choose. Do you prefer to stay in Brokilon or follow the path of destiny?" End quote. Ciri replies, "I want to follow the path of destiny." End quote. Geralt thanks Iethna. He assumes that the chalice contained normal water, and that this was a show to allow him to take Ciri with him. Iethna is offended, and invites Geralt to drink the water himself and see if it is the water of Brokilon. He knows his Witcher immunities will prevent any of the serious side effects from affecting him, and decides to drink the water. Right after he drinks, he collapses. Before I go any further, I just want to emphasize what all this means. The magical waters of Brokilon, which made a Witcher collapse, had no effect on a little girl shy of 10 years old. Ciri's destiny must take place outside of Brokilon, so Destiny herself has protected Ciri from the waters so she may safely leave. Getting back to the story, Geralt has just collapsed and begins having visions. In the first vision, Geralt says, quote, "I will return in 6 years," end quote. In the second vision, he is in a garden, offering a rose to a crowned woman, wearing rings adorned with emeralds. The woman says, quote, "Return. Return if you change your mind. Your destiny will be waiting for you." End quote. In the next vision, Geralt is at a festival named Belatin, and Yennefer is there. She is saying, quote, "It is too little. There must be something more," end quote, with a tear dripping down her cheek. Madame Iethna then appears in the vision and asks, quote, "The sword of destiny has two edges. You are one of them. But what is the other, White Wolf?" End quote. Geralt still does not acknowledge destiny and replies, "Only death is predestined for us." This spawns the last vision. Queen Calanthe appears, bleeding and in armor damaged by halberds. She says, quote, "You make a mockery of destiny. You mock her. You toy with her. The sword of destiny has two edges. You are one of them. The other. Is it death? But it is we who die. We die because of you. Death cannot catch you. It is content with us. It follows you step by step, White Wolf, and it is others who are dying because of you." End quote. At last, Geralt passes out. He wakes on the edge of the forest with Ciri, who wakes just after him. The two now understand their shared history from before Ciri was born. I described this story in the previous summary, but Ciri is the child that was promised by Dunny for saving him and enabling him to marry Princess Pavetta, the daughter of Queen Calanthe. Ciri is ecstatic that her destiny will finally be fulfilled, but even after all this, Geralt is not willing to take her under his wing. Instead, he will just bring her back home. Ciri guides them the rest of the way out of the forest, subconsciously using the magic she inherited from her mother to guide them. Once on the main path, Geralt ignores Ciri's sense of direction and takes a path which she is hesitant about. They soon come across a wagon, where a group of merchants were slaughtered by dryad arrows, but Geralt also notices that some of their throats were slit. Geralt and Ciri are surrounded by guards. The guards hypothesize that the Dryads cut down a tree to block the path and then killed the merchants when they got out to clear the road. They are waiting for a druid to come, and then these guards will go into the forest for a retaliatory attack. Geralt recognizes that the Dryads had nothing to do with the attack, and that some of the guards are actually the assassins. But he also knows that he is outnumbered and keeps quiet. Ciri, on the other hand, points out that the Dryads would never cut down a tree. Cover blown, the guards attack Geralt while Ciri runs up a tree. Geralt manages to take out the guards which are close to him, but he has no way to stop the large number of archers preparing their bows. But the Dryads have been watching, and a volley of arrows meticulously takes out all the Verdant archers. The druid, which the guards were waiting for, shows up, and it is Ciri's court druid, Mousesack. Mousesack says that Geralt must take Ciri. Destiny does not act kindly if she is denied, and will fulfill herself using bloody and destructive methods if she is not fulfilled willingly. Geralt still refuses and hands Ciri over to Mousesack to bring her home. He rides off as Ciri cries after him that she is his destiny. The final story of this book is titled Something More. It will fill in the blanks on what some of those earlier visions were all about, and makes for a nice closed ending to the short stories. I'll refresh you on the visions as needed while summarizing the story, but there is one detail in this story which has me very confused, considering that I've played The Witcher 2. I'm not going to draw any attention to it, but depending on how much future knowledge you have of the series, this may raise more questions than it gives answers. The games and the books are parallel universes, aka the games are not considered canon. So I am not sure if the thing which caught my eye will be rectified in future books, or allowed to stay as it is and the games just took a different path. Something More opens with a merchant named Yurga, hiding under his cart. It is near sunset, and there are a pile of skulls near him and under the cart, but a mysterious rider is approaching. The rider is Geralt, and he tells Yurga he should run, as people tend to get killed around this bridge at night. But Yurga will not leave his goods, even though his servants have already deserted him. Geralt offers to protect the merchant and his goods, and as a reward, Yurga must give him, quote, the thing you did not expect on returning home. Yurga agrees, and goes to hide under his cart, while Geralt prepares and drinks potions. Night comes, and a horde of skeletal beings, about as tall as a dwarf, and with frog-like, fanged mouths, approach. Geralt takes on the horde, slaying a large number of them, before the rest go running off. When Yurga emerges from under the cart to investigate, he finds Geralt limping and bleeding before he passes out. Geralt wakes the next morning in Yurga's cart, being tended by the merchant and his servants who have returned. He asks Yurga to give him one of the potions in his bag to numb the pain. When he drinks it, Geralt falls asleep and begins dreaming. Geralt dreams about when he was at the spring festival of Belleton and is dancing with a girl. As the two are getting more friendly, she gets a good look at his eyes and is frightened away. Disheartened, Geralt begins to walk away, where he bumps into Yennefer with a blonde man in hand. Yennefer forgets about the blonde man and whatever plans they may have had when she sees Geralt. Geralt would like to rekindle their old romance, but Yen is afraid that the relationship will end as it always has with them. She also does not want a one-night stand with somebody who she respects like Geralt. So they walk to a private area and talk, but they do end up sleeping together. Just before dawn, they begin talking again. She brings up what 3 jackdaws / boars / villain Trettenmirth had told them earlier, and says, we were made for each other, perhaps even destined for each other. But none of this can happen. It's a shame. We will have to separate when the day breaks. It can't be otherwise. We have to separate so as to not hurt each other. Destined for each other, made for each other, but the one who created us should have thought of something more. Forgive me, I had to tell you. End quote. Geralt perceives that she is crying while she is saying this, which may remind you of one of the visions Geralt had in the Sword of Destiny. She then abruptly cuts off and tells Geralt to go to Cintra and to not give up. She warns that dark times are coming, and he must reach Cintra in time. Cintra is where Ciri is from, in case I've not mentioned that. Geralt wakes in the cart, which is on the long road to Yurga's house. They've just crossed Temeria and entered Sodden. A guard at the border recognized Geralt and sent a messenger ahead to fetch a healer. Yerga thanks Geralt for saving him, and Geralt thanks Yerga for not abandoning him on the side of the road. But Geralt is still in pain and asks for another potion, which he drinks and begins dreaming again. In this dream, Geralt and Mousesack are looking at a group of children in Sintra. Geralt asks which is the predestined one, but Mousesack is forbidden from saying by Queen Calanthe. The queen does not want to give up her granddaughter easily, especially after Dunny and Pavetta have died in a shipwreck. Mousesack leads Geralt to the queen and leaves them to talk. She announces her lack of surprise that the Heartless Witcher would arrive punctually 6 years later for his reward. The queen lectures Geralt on the silliness of his search for predestined children, but if destiny is so strong, then destiny will be able to pass any obstacle that the queen throws at him. She has a group of male children brought in and asks Geralt to pick the child of destiny from them. After all, what difference does it matter if he takes a noble child or a homeless orphan? Either way, he gets a child to train as a witcher, but Geralt offers an alternative. He is mystified by destiny and only came to see the child of destiny and look it in the eyes. He says that the queen only has to ask him not to take her grandchild, and he will happily comply. The queen feels that this is Geralt trying to make her a beggar. She uses more harsh words before ordering him to pick the child out of injured pride. Geralt takes a guess and says the son of Pavetta is not among them. This statement briefly stuns Queen Calanthe because, as we know, Pavetta and Dunny had a daughter, but this has not been disclosed to Geralt. She leads Geralt into the palace garden. Here, the queen talks to Geralt with a more friendly tone and accuses him of being so unsure of destiny that he is afraid of it. Geralt admits that the queen is correct, and this is why he would come to look at the child but not take it. He will later say, "I don't know if I believe in anything. As for destiny, I think that it is not enough. There must be something more." The queen is relieved that he is not going to take her grandchild, and begins questioning him on witcher sterility, the percentage of children who actually survive the trials to become witchers, and why they search for children of destiny. She insinuates that Geralt himself is a child of destiny, but he quickly denies this. He knows that he was born from a sorceress, who probably did not take any protective measures because she did not think she could possibly bear a child. This sorceress gave Geralt to the witchers herself. By the end of the discussion, both Geralt and Queen Calanthe seem to have changed their minds. The queen is willing to give her grandchild away without issue, but Geralt does not even want to look the child in the eyes anymore. At no point has the gender of the child actually been definitively stated. Geralt says, quote, "I withdraw and renounce my claim on the boy. How can I see the face of destiny when I don't believe in it? To unite two individuals, I think, destiny is not enough. It takes something more." The dream ends with another scene that should remind you of one of Geralt's visions from the Sword of Destiny. Geralt is on his knees, handing a rose to Calanthe's emerald ring-adorned hand, as the queen tells him his destiny will remain here should Geralt wish to return. When Geralt awakes this time, he is in a room with a healer, who he quickly discerns as a sorceress by the potion she gives him. Her name is Vicenna, and she is amazingly pale, with hair as red as fire, but she will not show her face at first. She gives Geralt an overview of his injuries and the treatments he has received, and instructs him not to leave bed for 2 days. Geralt gets the feeling he knows Vicenna, and also gets the feeling that she is afraid of him. Geralt touches her knee and finds that she is shaking. It is never explicitly stated, but implied, that this young-looking sorceress is actually Geralt's mother. He finally gets a good look at her face and begins asking hypothetical questions. She is not expected to answer them, as they are intended to make her feel like a horrible mother for giving him to the Witchers, where the trials would likely kill him before he reached adulthood. He says that he will see her again tomorrow, in the light of day, and ask her a question which Geralt anticipates will give him a feeling of perverse pleasure. Vicenna begins to tear up as she says she will not be sticking around for that, and asks Geralt to stop. She also shoots down one of his earlier claims that Geralt was a name the Witchers gave him. It was her name for him. Her emotions show that she wanted to raise Geralt, but her occupation prevented her, and that there is a lot of guilt lingering from the decision. Geralt once again tries to say he will see her the next day and ask his question, but she uses a spell to put him to sleep. In the next scene, Geralt and Yerga are at Outer Rivia, and Geralt is commenting on the lack of destruction from when the Nilfgaardians so recently invaded. Jurga points out that destruction was actually complete, and that all the buildings they are seeing now did not exist before the invasion. They had to be built new from the ashes. Jurga also informs Geralt that they will soon be coming to a monument to the 14 at Mount Colomel, aka the Sorcerer's Mountain. 22 sorcerers and sorceresses came to the mountain and risked their eternal lives to fight off the Nilfgaardians at the Second Battle of Sodden. 14 of the 22 perished, but their sacrifice was instrumental in pushing the Nilfgaardians back and ultimately winning the war. A black obelisk was constructed at the site, and nearby citizens leave flowers and burn fires at the site as a memorial. The 14 who perished have their names inscribed on the monument, and everyone in the area memorizes their names so that the sacrifice will not be forgotten. Jurga begins listing them: Axel, known as Ravi, Triss Marigold, Atlan Kenk, Baniel of Brugen. But Geralt cuts him off and asks Jurga to stop. In the next scene, Geralt is at this shrine. The obelisk is surrounded by spires of stone. When sunset comes, the shadows cast by these spires will show where each sorcerer or sorceress stood and the direction they faced. As he's reading the names on the central obelisks, and reminisces on the memory he has of the departed, he hears a barefooted woman approach from behind. He greets her and asks if she is bringing flowers to the shrine. Instead, she says that she has come to collect the flowers brought for her. Geralt realizes that this frail young woman is Death. If you remember one of Geralt's visions from the Sword of Destiny, Queen Calanthe says Death follows Geralt everywhere he goes. He had always been afraid of looking behind him and meeting Death, but after visiting the shrine, he is no longer afraid. Death claims that Geralt is very afraid, though, and asks him if perhaps she should read the last name on the monument, the one he is afraid to read. Geralt says that she does not need to. He already knows the name: Yennefer of Vengerberg. He begs Death to take him, but Death says no, it'll be another day. Death walks away into a fog, and Geralt awakes in Jurga's cart. He is pleased to discover that this previous scene was just a feverish dream brought about from climbing to the monument earlier in the day when he should have been in bed getting rest. Still nervous, Geralt asks Jurga what the last name on the monument is. Jurga replies, Yul Grethin of Carreras. In the next scene, Jurga confesses he must come clean about something. He knows that when Geralt asked for the, quote, the thing you did not expect to find on returning home, that he was hoping for a child. But Jurga's wife has been barren after giving birth to their 2 sons, and they will not have a child waiting for him. Even so, Jurga is willing to give Geralt one of his sons out of respect for Geralt and his trade. In the final dream, Geralt is in Sodden, and the army has just been defeated by Nilfgaard at what would later be known as the First Battle of Sodden. The remains of the retreating army have taken control of a ferry, which is the only way to flee to the north over a wide river. The citizens are breaking out in panic because they know the Nilfgaardians have been destroying everything everywhere they go, and once the army is finished with the ferry, they are going to sink it to prevent the Nilfgaardians from using it. The citizens know they are done for. Geralt is relatively unaware of all this, but he runs into Dandelion, who fills him in. Geralt says he will help Dandelion get north one way or another, and then Geralt will continue his journey south to Sintra, presumably to take Ciri after being pressured by Yennefer at the Bellatin festival. Dandelion informs Geralt that Sintra is gone. They were among the first to be attacked and had no defenses set up. King Isoturseek and his army were quickly killed in the field. Queen Calanthe herself armored up and fought valiantly to hold the town against the invaders. Queen Calanthe was injured by pikemen, as described in one of Geralt's visions in The Sword of Destiny, and fell back to hold the castle. But when it was clear that the castle was lost as well, the queen went to the tallest tower and jumped head first. Geralt asks if the 11 or 12-year-old princess named Ciri possibly survived. Dandelion doubts anybody made it out alive. After hearing this, Geralt gives up his destiny with Ciri with relative ease. In Geralt's opinion, it was only destiny that tied them together, and not the something more that he's been looking for. Destiny can be defeated. The something more cannot be. He flees north with Dandelion. And, in the final scene of the book, Jurga returns home with Geralt and a large profit from his cart of goods. The wife Chrysidede Chrysitidae, is shocked when she sees the heavily armed Geralt, and this reminds Yerga of his promise to Geralt. He asks his wife where the children are, and she replies that the 3 of them will be back shortly. The wife asks Yerga not to be angry, but there was an orphaned little girl with gray hair and green eyes who was saved by the druids. The wife felt like they had to adopt her. While Yerga is nonsensically babbling about destiny, the children return home. Yerga and Chrysitidae look on as the girl and Geralt run to each other. I'll go ahead and directly quote the last several lines of the book here. Maybe the music I was listening to while I read this added to the effect, but it was a touching scene. Geralt. The Witcher turned instantly and rushed to meet the young girl. The scene left Yerga speechless. He had never seen anyone move so fast. They met in the middle of the yard. The little girl, with ashen hair, surrounded by a gray dress. The white-haired Witcher, with a sword on his shoulder, dressed in black leather, studded with silver, bounding lightly. The little girl trotting, the Witcher kneeling, the tiny hands of the little girl around his neck, the mouse-gray hair of the little girl falling on the Witcher's shoulders. Chrysitidae gave a muffled scream. Yerga drew her to him without saying a word, and took her in his arm. His other arm hugged the 2 boys. Geralt, the little girl repeated, hugging the Witcher's chest. You found me. I knew it. I always knew. I knew you'd find me. Ciri, the Witcher said. Yerga didn't see Geralt's face, hidden by the little girl's ashen hair. He only saw the black-gloved hands squeezing Ciri's back and shoulders. You finally found me. Oh, Geralt, I waited all this time. It took so long. We'll stay together now, won't we? We'll be together, right? Say it, Geralt. Forever. Say it. Forever, Ciri. It's just like they predicted, Geralt. Like they predicted. I'm your destiny. Say it. I'm your destiny. Yerga saw astonishment in the eyes of the Witcher. He heard Chrysitidae's discreet sobs, and felt her shoulders trembling. He knew that he would not understand the answer, but he waited anyway, with good reason. You're more than that, Ciri. More than that. And that is the end of this book. I'm sorry about the release time. I could make an equally long video explaining the troubles I had writing this, recording it, and actually keeping the work without it getting deleted by some of the worst luck possible. I believe that the rest of the books in the series are novels, which pertain to Geralt and Ciri's adventures, so I think these videos will be shorter to make since I'm just doing 1 plot line instead of 5. I hope you enjoyed this one. Please leave any feedback and let me know what you think. Have fun.